Alright, boys. Rant mode. Coming in hot. Someone I know relatively well just found out that their spouse was cheating on them, and as a consequence, they're going down the route of divorce. And it got me thinking about marriage in general. At least marriage in America. And I'm not married. I don't have any intention to get married anytime soon. But the way it was always depicted to me was that marriage was and is the second most important thing that happens to you in your entire life. The first being when you're born, obviously, and the second, whoever you choose to spend the rest of your life with, right? Ideally. Now, statistically, as far as last time I checked, which, to be fair, hasn't been recently, from what I heard, the divorce rate in America is around 50% or more. Like the majority of marriages. Now, that statistic is probably skewed because I think that if someone gets divorced and remarried, the chances of them getting divorced goes up exponentially. So, people that get remarried get divorced in way higher rates than people who are married for the first time. And so obviously that skews it. But it doesn't really matter because the point is there's a ton of divorce, at least in America. And if it's supposed to be the second most important thing that you do, you would think that people would kind of build up marriage to ensure that it doesn't crash and burn and end. Dang, now all the cars are coming now I don't want to talk. Okay, I see how it is. Interesting. Anyways, you'd think that a lot of people would kind of work on themselves and make sure that they understand enough about the other person before agreeing to marry that person, right? And agreeing to share their lives with that person. But the issue is we have this little thing called infatuation and emotions. Wouldn't you know that being infatuated with another person causes us to not care about whatever things we need to work on in our lives to be a responsible, dependent, significant other or spouse. And it also helps us ignore the red flags that we see in the person that we're interested in. And all we can focus on is how beautiful they are, how attractive they are, how wonderful they are, or more importantly, how good they make me feel. And as I said, I've obviously never been married. I've never had a girlfriend, but I have been close, and I've experienced that infatuation, and I've observed. I'm a good people observer. I've observed how that infatuation strikes other people. And I know I'm not Einstein here, and I'm not telling people anything that they probably don't already know. But I think that, at least for my life, I always built up myself as this person who, was going to do it right. Whenever I decide to pursue whoever I end up being interested in, if they're interested in me, I want to make sure that I'm in a position financially, mentally, physically, or I'm going into it prepared, prepared to provide, prepared to support in all those different areas. And that the other person is also a healthy individual who has been working on themselves in all these different areas, and that we align based on beliefs. And you'd think that that's like a pretty basic thing, but it's really not. And I don't know how much like modern media plays into the equation as far as like pressuring people to feel like they need to get married sooner rather than later. I know that it probably plays some role. I know I've had people tell me that it's like, when are you getting married? Are you seeing anybody? Yada, yada, yada. And it's kind of like this idea of, I don't know what you would call it, young love, I guess, where it's like, I don't know if it affects guys that much. It probably does. But women more often, where they feel like love might pass them by. And the truth is, it really won't. Hello again. But nonetheless, it's a fear that people have. They want to get married, or at least into a serious relationship in their 20s, or maybe even earlier than that. And there's this real negative stigma surrounding getting into serious relationships as late as your 30s or even 40s. And it's like, I honestly don't understand why that's there. Like, why that stigma exists. Because in my mind, and this is anecdotal, but in my mind, like, people don't really know who they are, what they're doing, where their objective is, what their struggles are, what their strengths are, until significantly later in life. Like, I didn't know what I really valued in life until I was like into my mid-20s, and I didn't know kind of what I wanted out of life. And they say that like people's minds aren't fully developed until like 25 anyway. So it's like, from my perspective, it's like, well, why wouldn't you want to wait that long? Because the other thing about that is, if you're willing to wait that long, and the other person is willing to wait that long, like, you kind of are sharing a certain value to begin with, as opposed to getting to a relationship because it feels good, and then getting into a marriage because it feels good, and then having children with someone because it feels good, only to find out that neither of you really knew who you were, and now, something terrible has happened, and someone was unfaithful, or neither of you really love each other, or, dare I say it, neither of you really knew what love was to begin with. So many people seem to think that love is a feeling, that it's something you can be in or out of. I'm in love. I fell in love. Like it's a pool, and you just tripped into it, and now you're in love. And my brother, he has a song, and one of the lyrics to it is, just because you're in love doesn't mean love is in you. And I think that kind of harkens to a point, which is, just because it feels good, just because the word's tossed around, doesn't mean that you have any idea what it is. What I believe about love is that it's a state. It's a perspective. If you love someone, you're going to do whatever it is you need to do to ensure the highest good of that other person, even if it means walking away. And oftentimes, it does mean walking away. Having healthy boundaries with that person. Understanding when to speak and when to be silent. or in some cases just to remove yourself from that person's life altogether and to not interact with them because you're not good for each other. And that's a really, really hard pill to swallow, because especially if you're infatuated with somebody, which is what people associate with falling in love, your emotions and the chemicals in your brain are shooting off in ways that are unbelievably powerful. And I have experienced that infatuation. And it was unbelievably powerful. And it felt extremely wonderful. Like, it was like this incredible high to be interested in someone and to know that person was interested in me as well. And how, I don't even know how to explain it. It just felt amazing in like every way imaginable. But in my case, it was not to be. And thankfully, I was able to recognize that and get out before too much damage was done in the relationship. And I was able to communicate with that person that, hey, this isn't good for either of us. This is just a emotion. This is just a feeling. I don't know that much about you, but I know myself. And I am not in a position where a relationship is the right move forward. I wish you all the best of luck in life, but I have to walk away from this relationship in every aspect. And what I realized is that conversation I had with that person is like probably a healthier version of the conversation that the people I went to high school and junior high with had on a monthly basis. People that were dating around all the time, or people that are super into hookup culture, or whatever it may be. It's like you have to like break off these relationships. And there's this idea of toxicity in relationships, and I'm not good for them, they're not good for me, he, she, whatever. And it's like just this whole world of dating and romantic relationships in any kind of scenario that the end goal is possibly marriage needs to be handled with a lot more intention and understanding. Like, if you're gonna look into and research and learn about anything, relationships, specifically relationships that lead to marriage, is probably one of the better things that you can learn about or observe. And I always thought a good way of going about it was finding a married couple that you think has a healthy relationship, or at least there's parts of their relationship that you've observed that are healthy, and asking them about what they wish they knew before and what they're glad they knew during, and what they've learned, and anything else along those lines. But I think ultimately a person has to be willing to be honest with himself, to say, I'm not there yet. Even if I love this person and I feel a certain attraction toward this person, if I'm not in a position to even start considering this, and I'm only doing it because of what I feel like I can get out of this relationship, I'm in it for the wrong reasons, and I need to walk away. Because ideally, the person you end up spending the rest of your life with will make you a better person as much as you make them a better person. Right? That's the ultimate goal. It's like, if you can become a better person by yourself, then it's kind of your responsibility to become a better person by yourself. But if this person is really going to add to your life and make you a better person, and you are going to make them a better person, then that's a consideration. But so often we conflate the two. We say, oh, because of the way this person makes me feel and how in love I am, they must be making me a better person. And the truth is, we're looking at it from a selfish perspective. they're making me feel this way. And I suppose if that feeling lasted forever, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But it doesn't. Everyone talks about the honeymoon phase. And if everyone talks about it, it's got to be flipping real, bro. And that honeymoon phase fades away. It is a phase. It begins and ends. And when it ends, it doesn't feel as good anymore. And all of a sudden, the relationship becomes work. And I didn't sign up for this. I don't want to do this. This is hard. This doesn't feel good. Because we got into it with the wrong intention. We got into it thinking, I am going to feel good forever. This is going to be great. And it doesn't. It feels bad at certain times. A lot of the time, in fact, it feels bad. And I know, again, I'm not married. I've never even had a really significant romantic relationship with another person. So what the hell do I know? You're just yapping because you can for no reason. And that's fair enough. I guess my experience is anecdotal. But it just got me thinking because of this recent situation. And I don't know. I guess talking about it helps me understand it better. And hopefully helps other people understand it better. But I don't know. I don't want that to happen to me, and I don't wish it upon any of my friends. But I see so many relationships where it's just like, so many unhealthy relationships. And the thing about it is, a successful marriage isn't like depicted as, oh, you stay together for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. A successful marriage is you stay together forever, like until you or the other person dies. Like, that's a successful marriage. An unsuccessful marriage is, regardless of how much time passes, if people fall prey to their selfish desires and they cheat on the other person, or it doesn't even necessarily have to be cheating. If it's just an absent marriage where the two people just kind of tolerate each other. Because I know relationships where it's like they're together, but they're not even sleeping together. One person sleeps on the couch, one person sleeps in the bed, and it's like they're like strangers. They're like married strangers almost. And it's just weird. And so that wouldn't constitute as a successful marriage either. And so from the outside looking in, it can be kind of misleading, because there are a lot of relationships that are suffering, a lot of marriages that are unhealthy, that you don't know until it explodes. And all of a sudden, it's all over the place, and you go, wow, I never would have expected that. Or wow, this happened. And it's like, it may take 10, 20, 30 years until that explosion happens, but that explosion is indicative of what that entire marriage was like, what that entire 30 years of those people's lives were. And like, it's not like 10 of those years were successful, or 20 of those years were successful, or 25 of those years, and then it was just the last year they changed. It's like, I guess that could happen, but more likely it's that as soon as that honeymoon phase started to fade away, it just progressively faded further and further into obscurity, and instead of battering down the hatches and working on the relationship, because that's what's required to make it healthy and to make it work forever, they just kept focusing on whatever it is they wanted to do individually, and then eventually something happened that was the last straw, And now everyone on the outside looking in is like, oh dang. And it makes me wonder about all the people that I know that are in relationships and that are married. Not to be too much of a Debbie Downer, because I know a lot of the people watching my videos are probably married. But it's like, how many of them are actually going through difficult, strenuous hardship because they got into it with the wrong intention? You know? Like, that, I had an image in my mind of what it would have been like if I married this person that I was really interested in at one point in my life. And it was just terrible. It was a terrible image of like, just, like I could see the honeymoon phase fading before my eyes in my own timeline in my head. And like, I'm this old dude, and she's this older woman, more like in our 50s. I guess 50's not that old, but like we're older. And it's just like, we're watching TV, we're set in our ways, we're doing our own thing. Like, the emotion and the love and the romance is long since faded, and neither of us are happy together. And I have all these regrets thinking back of what I could have done if I didn't go down this path. And that's not an inevitability, obviously. But if you don't do the hard work before you get into the relationship, it's going to be even harder to make it work, if that makes sense. And statistically speaking, majority of people aren't succeeding in that area. So it's like, I don't know, I guess PSA announcement that everyone knows, but no one really cares about. Take more time. It is okay to be married in your 30s. It's okay. And I'm not just saying that because that's likely what will happen to me. I'm saying that because it is okay. I am here to tell you that love will not pass you by. I suppose that like young love and the fiery emotions and the sex drive that comes along with it is probably extremely attractive to people. But it's like, dude, sex is not the most important part of marriage at all. Not even close. Now, it is an important factor to it. Sexual attraction is absolutely pivotal. But there are a lot of other things that are way, way more important. And like, sex is one of those things that if you're not really loving of that other person, it's going to be a lot less effective at bonding you with that other person than if you were. And it's going to do more damage. And then that's the other risk. You know, it's like, if you're just dating around and hooking up all the time, like, no matter how much you don't want it to be true, sex is a bonding mechanism for humans. Like, emotionally and physically, we bond with that other person, even if it's a one-night stand. And that detracts from future connections, and that detracts from future bonds. Not saying you're doomed, but it's like, I don't know. From my perspective, that's why, like, premarital sex is something that I'm not going to partake in, is because I know that though it would probably be very fun and feel very good, it's going to have long-term consequences that are not worth it. They're not worth it in the end. And that's true for pornography as well. Pornography manipulates the mind, creates an addictive cycle, and obviously is not healthy for a relationship in any capacity. And then I guess one of the counter arguments is, well, if you're waiting until you're ready, until you're perfect, you'll never get there. You'll never be perfect, and you'll never get married because you'll never feel like you're ready enough. You know, like that's what some people tell me when I talk about where I want to be before I get into a relationship. And, you know, there might be some truth to that argument of like, well, if you keep waiting, you're just going to wait forever and then you're just going to be single forever. And to that I say, it is better to be single for the rest of your life than it is to get into an unhealthy, toxic relationship for an extended period of time. Like there's that quote that's better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all. And that quote is true, but only when you take into consideration what love actually means. Actually caring for that other person. If loved and lost was depicted as a divorce, that saying is the dumbest thing on the planet. It is better to have gotten into a relationship and then divorced than to have never gotten into a relationship at all. That's the most insane thing. That quote doesn't mean that. And yet people, now I'm getting pissed. But people seem to think that it does. And it's like, no, you're conflating the terminology because you don't understand what love is to begin with, dude. Get it together, bro! The truth is, it is better to be single as a Pringle than it is to get into a toxic relationship. That's the truth. I hate to break it to you, but that is the truth. But people are afraid of that. Like, people are like, ooh, I don't want to be single for the rest of my life. Ooh, I don't want to be alone. And it's like, okay, fair enough. It is natural to not want to be single. It is natural to not want to be alone. But if you go into it too fast, you are going to have a million regrets. And the likelihood, statistically speaking, is that it is going to crash and burn. Your relationship is going to crash and burn. So take your time, bro. Take it nice and slow. Get your financial situation accounted for. Get your mental situation accounted for. Dig deep into your mental state with a therapist and figure out all the crap your parents left you with, all of the predispositions, all of the shortcomings, all of the weaknesses, all of the strongholds that you're facing in your life. Unpack those before you get into a romantic relationship, because that other person is not going to want to be your therapist. Like, you can work through things together, but if you have problems that you've been struggling with since you were in your teenage years, that your parents jacked up your psychology because they didn't raise you perfectly, you gotta figure those things out before you get into that relationship. Otherwise, it's going to be just another point of stress on top of all the other issues that you can't possibly foresee them all. Like, you want to take care of as many things that could be a problem before you go into it. You want to make sure you are right. You got it figured out. And then the problems that you couldn't ever have possibly anticipated are going to spring up, and then you can put all of your energy and focus into solving those issues, right? As opposed to having this huge backlog of things that you could have figured out on your own. You know, and by on your own, I don't mean literally by yourself. You know, you can get help. But on your own as in not in a relationship. But I gotta say, this message, it ain't a fun one. It doesn't make you feel good. And it's hard to stick to as well. Like, realistically speaking, this person that I almost got into a relationship with, I should have never even gotten as far as I did with that person. I should have cut it off a lot earlier, but I was not expecting infatuation to hit me like a flippin' truck, bro. I was not expecting it to floor me. And I was smitten. I was, by every definition of the word, smitten. I was in love. It felt so good. And then I got the hell out of there. Nothing against the other person. They're a wonderful person. And I care about them. And I think about them still. But, yeah, I am just not there. And I was a fool to even get as close as I did to think that in some capacity I was ready. I wasn't. So it's like I take responsibility for that. It's like, okay, it takes two to tango, and that's true, but I'm only in control of my own actions. So that's all I can be concerned about. Anyways, the sun has gone down and the moon has gone up. And long ago somebody left with the cup, but he's grinding and striving and hugging the turns for who he still yearns. Da-da-da-da-da-da. He's going the distance. All right. Rant over. 30 minutes. 31 minutes. Dang, boy. 31-minute rant. Jeez. These are going to be hopefully a more regular thing. I'm going on walks every day, and I've been wanting to upload, like, I don't know, rants, I guess. Just things that I'm thinking about and concerned with. Even if my thoughts aren't completely focused around it. Like, it's not like a teaching moment. Like, obviously, if I wanted to, like, try and teach based off of what I believe and what I think and what I've learned, I'd, like, you know, bullet point a bunch of points. Obviously, there's probably a ton of things that I went over, or maybe even things that I said that were incorrect. I'm not perfect. I'm not a professional. I'm just a dude saying words and sharing my thoughts. And, you know, I think that's all right. So, hopefully down the pipeline, maybe once a walk, dude. As I'm walking, I'll be making one of these videos, ranting and raving about, I don't even know, whatever. And as the passerbys come by me, they'll be looking at me as I'm screaming into my phone, "Get it together!" Like, they're walking their dog, terrified of me. And, you know, if that happens, that'll help steel my mind against social awkwardness and anxiety, right? If I can act like a psychopath in front of people and not care what they think, dude, I'll be way more confident. And that can only be a good thing. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed.